All right. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome in. Out of bounds, 105.9 The Zone. Driven by your next John Deere tractor at Mississippi Ag. Hunting camp, farm, family land. AgUp.com. John Deere, America's tractor. 16 locations. 2 right here in the Jackson Metro, Canton and Pearl. Your next John Deere tractor, John Deere lawnmower. Mississippi Ag. Welcome in, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. WRKS, we're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. You can watch the show right now on Facebook. Search the Out of Bounds show. YouTube, search Out of Bounds Sports. Welcome in our friend Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN. Lugs joins us on the Modelo guest line. Lugs, you like a Modelo every now and then?
I like a Modelo. I like a Modelo Negro, and I like a little lime with both.
Ooh, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, it's National Burrito Day, and Blake and I were talking about.
Isn't that every day?
Well, that's a good point. That's good. Burrito and Modelo. I mean, does it get any better than that?
No, I'm telling you.
We're excited about it. We are.
How you been, buddy?
I'm great, man. How are you? It's been too long.
Yeah, it has been too long. I'm good. We've been actually able to run some camps and combines and get out on the road, see some kids, and it's been good.
Yeah, you know, we spent a week in Orlando. I thought about you down there. That's where you do all the Under Armour All-American stuff, and
Yeah.
I hope that's back in play sooner than later for you guys.
Yeah, you know, we're hoping to get back at it and kind of get back to a full slate of schedule. You know, we do an underclassmen event down there the week of the Under Armour game called the Future 50, and it's 50 kids that we target nationally that are, you know, either juniors or sophomores. And it works. We bring those kids in during the week of the Under Armour game, but we're going to actually run it in the summer this year, just because we missed that opportunity for those underclassmen in that week of January. So looking forward to that being a summer event now.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. You know, something we've been talking about, Luke's, was the SEC West. Weird year here. Bama's going to be the favorite, but I think I think second place is up for grabs. Auburn's in transition. LSU's on their third set of coordinators. And Jimbo, who's I think overrated, is breaking in a new quarterback, but he likes to have a 127-page playbook, so that probably won't go well. So when I look at that, you know, the Lane Train returns the best QB, I think, by far and away, and the best QB in the league, and I'm one of the best in the country. I don't understand. I'm hearing all these guys talk about Spencer Rattler and JT Daniels, and I'm like, Matt Corral's just as good, if not, well, he's better than JT Daniels, a lot better. But anyway, the point is, to me, Lugs, one, Bama could take a slight step back with Bill O'Brien and Bryce Young, just because they're new. Two, I think Ole Miss has built the best to clip them if anybody's going to do it. Three, I think second place is up for grabs. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I do too, and I agree with you wholeheartedly about Matt Corral. I think Matt Corral is on the level of Spencer Rattler and anybody else. I think he's special. And anytime you have that position, you know, zeroed in on and you're locked in there, you can build components around it. The question is going to be is how far and how quickly can Ole Miss come on defense? You know, whether it's from a personnel standpoint, whether it's creating turnovers, something to try to close that gap. Because I do think that as good as you're going to be on offense, defensively you're going to have to get a few stops if you're going to hang with an Alabama or some of the elite programs, not only in the SEC West, but in the country. The team that I think actually, and it was ugly for a while last year and it did not go well, but just about everybody's back is LSU. And I think that Max Johnson showed a ton of bright spots when he played down the stretch. And they've got a lot of quarterbacks now that have played a lot of snaps. To me, if they can get back on track, they are the best talent profile, probably top to bottom, of the teams that would be attempting to compete with Alabama. And I agree with you as well on Alabama. They're going to have great personnel around a very young, inexperienced quarterback that attempted, 22 passes in 9 appearances last year. So they're going to be green, but they've got the components around that player to be really, really good. I got to be honest with you, I'm not as concerned about the change in leadership from a coaching perspective. Maybe I should be, but the one thing Nick Saban has proven over the years is that he's targeted the right guy to keep the thing going on offense when there's a change.
Yeah. But, Loxley was a swing and miss, and Tosh Lapoy was a swing and miss. But you're right. I mean, his hit rate is high.
Lapoy was. I mean, Loxley had some good offenses there with Tua.
Yeah, I guess so.
I agree with you on defense.
All right, here's where I'm going with that, Luke. Tom Luginbill, ESPN on the Modelo guest line. Sark was so off the charts good, they can't help but take a step back, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting because, I don't want to say I've been a critic of Mac Jones, all right? But I took a lot of time this past fall and really kind of studied what Alabama was doing, because what stood out to me was the completion percentage, okay, and then the completion percentage on throws at different levels, short, intermediate, and deep. And I'm sitting there and I'm watching this guy and I'm looking at the personnel around him. I'm saying, I think we can all agree Alabama doesn't have good personnel. They have elite personnel.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there watching them on offense. And here's something that I thought was just remarkable. And when we actually ran the numbers, it kind of told the story. So we all now who are familiar with college football, we're familiar with the RPO game, right? So you've got the run pass option, and you're targeting somebody on defense that you're going to option off of. It's going to tell you whether you're going to keep it or give it or throw it and all those sorts of things. What Sark did is Sark created pre-snap RPOs, which he would use the motion, sometimes Devontae Smith, sometimes Jalen Waddle, whoever it needed to be. He would use the motion to create the option before the ball was ever snapped. So the motion would get the defense to rotate and do what they needed to do. And once that happened, Mac Jones knew exactly where to go with the football before the ball was ever snapped. He didn't have to make any type of progression. He didn't have to make any type of decision after the ball was snapped. You know what his completion percentage was on the year on plays that involved motion pre-snap?
75?
92.
Good grief, Lugs.
92% of his passes. So what does that tell you? They're throwing bubble screens. They're throwing quick screens to the boundary. They're throwing slants. They're throwing all the. So I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, this is going to be an issue because everybody gets all enthralled. And I know the numbers were great and the offense was fantastic, but I said this, and it's not popular, but I believe it. And I had a chance to do BYU's games last year. If you took Zach Wilson and put him at Alabama, you would have the exact same result as you had last year. If you took Mac Jones and put him at BYU does not have the season they had last year.
How about that? Now, I agree with you. I'm not buying Mac Jones as the 4th pick in the draft. I mean, he will be, or 5th or whatever. But
it's just for him to be talked about as a top 10 pick, in my opinion, is way out of left field.
Wow, the pre-snap stuff. So he was not asked.
Pre-snap RPO.
Okay. Pre-snap RPO, 92%. Good grief. 92%.
And so, I mean, you're sitting there looking at it going, okay, well, if he completed 7% of the season, and then you start to break down, okay, well, what were his attempts? How many of those attempts occurred on plays with motion? And it kind of tells you the story.
Mm-hmm. And Sean McVay was doing the same thing with Jared Goff on that when they were running motion with the Rams.
Until they played the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
That's right.
They figured them out because.
Wow.
And the other thing McVay would do, McVay would stand way down the sideline, not behind the offense, behind the defense, and he would tell Jared Goff, this is the word around the league. He'd tell Jared Goff, okay, this is what they're in, this is what we're running, snap the ball, go, so that nobody could get a beat on it, right? And then all of a sudden they got in the Super Bowl, and when you watch the Patriots defensively in that game and you watch all their movement and all of the things, after 15 seconds had gone off the play clock, it was an entirely different look.
Wow. Belichick, 2 weeks. Unbelievable. Wow. Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show in the Modelo guest line, brought to you by Havana Smoke Shop and Welcome Home Beef. All right, Lugs, Mac Jones, if he goes to the Carolina Panthers, they're at 8. Let's say they trade up or he falls, whatever. This is hypothetical. If he goes there, will he have a better chance to be successful because of Joe Brady, or it doesn't matter where he goes, he is what he is?
Well, I think Joe Brady can certainly help him because Joe Brady does a lot of the things that I think Sark does such a good job of, and that is setting up your players for success based off of their skill set and building the offense around their skill set. So I think that's a positive. The question is he a guy that you win because of or that you win with? Because if you don't, in the NFL, everybody's personnel is elite. So if you're going to take a guy within the top 10 picks, he better be somebody that you win because of, right? And I think that's the question everybody's asking. So when you ask that question, the answer as it relates to Joe Brady is how much can he do? Because until you get the guy and realize, okay, this guy's got limitations, or, hey, we can throw the book if this guy could just take it and run with it. Till you get him, you really, truly don't know. But I think that would be a big question mark for me because when you're playing at a place like Alabama and you're not, in my opinion, an elite skill set guy, you're going to start to question that. I mean, let's look at the pro day, for example, Bo. I'm one of those guys. See, the thing that's interesting about pro days is the sport of football is different than any other sport because it can't be duplicated in shirts and shorts.
Right.
So every time you have a pro day, everybody coming into that pro day, especially as it relates to quarterbacks, they already know what the player's physical strengths and limitations are. The one thing they're doing with quarterbacks in pro day is they want to walk away and say, okay, this guy is innately accurate. And what does that mean? That means in a pro day setting, you do not miss guys versus air because that's all you're doing. You are in a manufactured, scripted workout where you are throwing routes versus air. Did you see how many balls Mac Jones missed in his pro day versus air last week?
I did.
Versus Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields in their pro day and Zach Wilson in his. You can't miss versus air in a pro day. You can't do it because the whole essence of the position is accuracy, and live bullets aren't flying by. There's nobody on defense. There's nobody coming at you. Can you throw the ball in a catchable spot so that the receiver doesn't have to make an adjustment? And whether it was John Lynch, whether it was Kyle Shanahan, I know a lot of people are talking about what their quarterback move is going to be, whether it was Bill Belichick standing, you got a lot of reactions out of those coaches when you see missed throws versus air.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. So is it these teams are falling in love with Mac Jones, maybe the Panthers, maybe the Patriots, or is it that they're desperate because you got to have somebody at that position, Tom?
Maybe a little bit of both. I do believe that, if you're taking an Alabama guy that he's been well tutored, he's been well coached, there's an expectation level to perform. Things have not been easy. Your off season is very difficult. You have a lot on your shoulders as the quarterback at that program, and there's a ton of pressure. And so you probably fall in love with a lot of those things, and you should, because those are great intangible traits that can reflect mental toughness and competitive nature and all of those sorts of things. But physically, could he do it to the level that you need to do it if you're going to be a top 10 pick, the expectation is that one day you're Aaron Rodgers. Okay. The expectation is, that one day you're going to win a Super Bowl, not to be a guy,
right.
Not just to be on a roster. That's not the expectation. You can't be
Case Keenum.
You can't be Case Keenum, or you can't even be, you're going to be the guy that was at UCF that got taken by the Jaguars.
Bortles.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't. You got to be. You're expected to be a Super Bowl guy or competing to take your team to a Super Bowl, and I do think that requires a certain physical skill set on top of all of the other things that you're trying to scrutinize.
How do you think Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN on the Modelo guest line, how do you think Urban Meyer's transition will look? I mean, you have covered him for a long time. You've sat one-on-one with him many a Fridays before calling their games, wherever, Florida, Ohio State, so on. How do you look? He's going to get Trevor Lawrence, which is huge, but how do you think the transition will look, Tom, over the next 2 to 3 years for Urban?
You know, it's hard, and I think it's going to be hard for him because he's always been so used to having the most bullets in the gun, right? Always having the best players, always going into just about every game he's ever coached at the collegiate level, outside of maybe a handful, where he had the better team and would have to screw it up to not win the game. And those days are over. That's not the case. Now all of a sudden you're playing from behind. You don't have maybe the same roster that some of your competitors have. It is strictly a quarterback-driven league. It's been proven to be for decades and decades and decades. If he hits on Trevor and Trevor is for real and it happens, then you're going to see, I think, you're going to see a probably a pretty steady increase in wins in production. Here's the thing about him. He's maniacal. He's a detail-oriented guy. He is really good at player evaluation. What nobody knows yet is how will he deal with the professional athlete?
Mm-hmm.
How will he deal with guys that either can't or won't be intimidated, can't or won't allow themselves to be coached, and want to run their own show? How will that mix? And again, those are things that nobody knows. That's what's going to make it so much fun, because a lot of the control that he's used to having is not going to be at his fingertips. The players control that now.
Right.
And so that's going to be a transition for him. But to me, if you he's such a good coach that if you hit, he's just like everybody else in that league. If you hit on a quarterback, then you got a chance to be really good, really fast.
And some of the guys will do their own thing. You're right. In the locker room, it'll just be a balance. But Trevor Lawrence is super coachable, I'd have to believe. And so that is, that's huge for Urban Meyer, right?
Yes. Big time.
Okay.
Big time. And I think he's done a nice job with his staff, hiring a lot of guys with NFL experience and guys that have been around a lot of different places that he can lean on. Where I think he'll have the biggest influence is going to be in player evaluation, free agent projections, and market value evaluation, and then draft preparation. That's where he will shine because that's his strength. He's a lot like Nick Saban in that area. He will know the right questions to ask, what he's looking for, how to go about targeting it, who to talk to. He'll be, as far as head coaches go, he'll be as good as there is in that league in that regard.
I heard Jimmy Johnson talk about how he told Urban that he had to wear the GM personnel hat too.
Yeah.
Boy, that's tough though, Tom. Most guys can't do it. Belichick has been terrible in the draft. I think Pete Carroll's somewhat lost he has now full control since Paul Allen passed away, which I don't think is good for John Snyder and the Seahawks. Sean Payton tried to do it and then hired Jeff Ireland and allowed Mickey Loomis to do some more things. After he won the Super Bowl, he kind of went absolute power and it didn't work. Anyway, you're going to burn out though. So I guess we just know he'll burn out in 4 or 5 years because Jimmy Johnson said he had no downtime because he went straight from the season to the draft to personnel. He didn't even have time to play golf. Your thoughts?
Right. Well, there's one asterisk in there though that's very interesting that we tend to forget about as it relates to Jimmy Johnson. If you remember those Cowboys teams, all right, all of that was done prior to free agency. There was no free agency then, if you remember.
Right.
It was all done through trade and draft evaluation. So you didn't have a shift in roster every single year with players coming and going. So when they built that thing off that Herschel Walker trade, all right, and started to put all the pieces together, that ended up being their team for 5 to 6 years. If you remember, the end of that era, Plan B free agency started in '94. That last Super Bowl team that Barry Switzer coached, that Jimmy Johnson had put together, was the last of that great unit before it got broken up. So what Jimmy Johnson's right. It's hard to wear all those hats. It's even more difficult when you're doing it in the era of free agency.
Interesting. Okay. Man, Jimmy Johnson was just stealing candy from babies. I mean, he drafted Steve Walsh out of Miami and traded him for 2 1s and a 2. And the guy was a career backup, Luke's. Isn't that amazing?
Right. And then got Russell Maryland in the mix.
I mean,
it was unbelievable. But you know what? If you think of, like, look at what all those guys that were really good back then. Bill Walsh, he handled all the personnel. He was making all those decisions. And again, when you make those decisions and you take those guys, they couldn't go anywhere. Like, look at those 49ers teams. Look at those Steelers teams before them. Then the Cowboys. Every year your roster came back intact. The only new guys were the drafted guys or somebody in a trade.
Mm-hmm. All right, I want to switch gears real quick. I got about 30 seconds. Weird question, but it just popped in my weird brain. Let's segue to this. Who's the first to go? Kirby, Ogeron, or Jimbo?
Orgeron.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Could be a combo of off-field and on-field, Tom.
Yeah, here's the deal to me with Kirby. Kirby has a quarterback right now that is good enough. He's not great. He's good enough to get them to the college football playoff because they are going to be really good around him, okay? The problem is when JT Daniels is there, Georgia has done such a poor job of recruiting quarterbacks that I don't know what they're going to do. It's mind-boggling to me. So they're going to have to, they got Gunnar Stockton committed in this class, and maybe he's the answer, but he's not on campus yet. With Jimbo, you're getting paid all that money, and the road to Atlanta, the West, is just brutal.
Yeah. All right, Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show. We're going to do this again sooner than later, my man. Be good.
All right, buddy. Be good.
See you, dude. Tom Luginbill. The interview was brought to you by Havana Smoke Shop, premium cigars for game day tonight. Duty Noble Field. Well, you can watch it on the patio deck or at Duty Noble Field. Also, Final Four, and then the Masters. Great cigars at Havana Smoke Shop. And also presented by Welcome Home Beef, retail store, Main Street in Starkville. Great selection of premium beef at Welcome Home Beef. Plus, they'll ship to your door. WelcomeHomeBeef.com. Jeff Jones, Jonesy Q, award-winning pitmaster, 9 o'clock hour, cooking some elk burgers for us. Welcome in. Good morning. Hour